Sweet. Okay, I see the little live counter. And where we going live? Are we going on Facebook
Yes.
and
So it should be
multiple
popping up.
platforms, right?
I believe that this is just going out to Facebook. Yes, we are live. So hello, everybody.
Yes, and it should be popping.
All right. Today, me and Javier and I are going to be going over some of the benefits that you can expect, particularly when dealing with investment accounts, although there are numerous benefits. If you see the graphic here, we planned on going over the main benefits while investing using one of these common law trusts. And then we also wanted to take this opportunity to let people know about the scholarship course that we have coming up on the 27th. And so we will just kind of let people filter in here, wait till we get a couple of people in, and then we'll get into it.
Awesome. Can you see on your side comments?
Yes, and they should pop up on the right here on our streaming app.
Okay.
But I do have it pulled up on my phone as well, so should be good.
Sounds good. Perfect. All right.
Okay, well. All right. Well, Javier, what do you think about, should we just go through this graphic here and kind of expand on each one of these points a little bit?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So the first one on the list here is a distinct juridical personality. And so what comes up for me when I think about this is the way in which the trust separates liability by, letting the trust hold an asset. It's no longer in your name, and it's protected because of the separate identity of the trust.
Yeah, you know what's unique is every time we speak about a trust, it's important to distinguish that it's not just a business type. It's a container in which we can do all sorts of different forms of activity protected under a specific form of registration, right? So when we do our EIN registration, when we do our trust declaration, we're learning how to operate a very distinct form of personality that not only can do all forms of virtually any type of business, but it can also do stuff like open up investment accounts. Ooh, that looks better. I like that, Matt.
I think Daniel pulled the strings in the background there, but
Cool. We got a little wizard in the back.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so it's another thing that makes it so interesting is that rather than, applying for a cookie cutter cutout of an entity type like an LLC or a C Corp, this is really flexible in that it's an express contract form that is able to be molded as you see fit for your needs, however you need it. So I think, and that is another reason why it has the personality that it has. It's why it gets treated the way that it does by law, is that expressed in the contract form, you are using a container to serve somebody else. That's a part of its identity, its personality. And that's another reason why it doesn't incur taxable events the same way as a personal business would.
Yeah, correct. And then what's important too about the trust is not so much that it can do all sorts of businesses, but one of the things that we love to highlight it's the charitable underlying tone. And with any good businesses, and this is what I truly believe as a business owner and as someone who has been an entrepreneur for many years, when we talk about taxation, we're talking about fees, we're talking about money that's not in our pocket, it's going somewhere else. And so how effective is that capital going somewhere else, right? And ultimately the question would be also, how well do we trust our institutions to do with that capital? So, being an entrepreneur for me, something like this trust is a container to be able to set aside the money that normally you would give off to some foreign entity, be able to use those funds, be able to work with other individuals and maximize what you can do. And I believe that between Matt and I, and between other individuals and other trustees, we're way more effective at producing charitable organizations, donative missions and stuff like that, rather than giving it to someone we really don't know. And so this ensures not only in our trust declaration, what defined purpose a trust is made for, but also we can use the advantages a trust has to build businesses aside to continue to fund other ventures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important point to consider, is that, we've seen that the income taxes that we get taken from us on a daily basis, sometimes upwards of 30% of your income, actually doesn't pay for services. And we've known about this since the 80s with the Grace Commission under Reagan. They found, they did a big bunch of research into the, where all the income taxes were going, and they found that, 100% of the money that is collected through income taxes gets split off and paid on to the interest of the national debt before any services are rendered, which is like, it really reveals the Ponzi scheme setup of our tax system. And, they print money out of thin air, they loan it at interest, which creates, the deficit. And there's never going to be enough capital generated through that process that will ever be able to pay off the interest. And so, a lot of people think it's, it's a moral thing to, pay your taxes every year, your income taxes. I'm not saying all taxes are terrible. I think most of them are wildly out of control. But I do think, as you said, that it would be different if they were using income taxes to help needy children or to fund, wellness programs or social programs, but they're not. They generate these wellness programs. They get a blank check from the Federal Reserve. They spend as much as they can, and then we're on the hook for that. And that inflation and lack of monetary value, just it compounds over time. So it's a beautiful thing that we have the option to operate in business in a way that's protected and not forced to pay out those things.
Yeah, it's another thing, since we're talking about trust and business entity types, another good question is why are we being set up as LLCs? Why are we setting up as corporations? Who's the one who started this? And what's the incentive behind it? And of course, all good things, they all have paper trail, and you can see why. There's an incentive for the government to register and mass advertise these business entity types, because they are limited form of entities that are created out of a statute, meaning all corporations, all LLCs, all C corps, they're made from a specific statute. In turn, what this means is that you're obligated to participate in a system that they have created. And this system is in a different jurisdiction that living men are used to. We're living men, we're used to common law. And and just between us, that are all the people that are listeners here, and then Matt as well, of course. I was reading earlier today in a very important document that was called How Equity Jurisdiction Had Taken Over Common Law. Dude, this isn't talked about amongst the common people, but amongst people that talk about constitutionality, that speak about sovereignty, truth. When we talk about how equity jurisdiction and compelling performance under contracts and working under maritime law and stuff like that, this is how it happened. And it turned into the federal rules and federal regulations and court systems. So instead of people actually living life under their own terms, under knowledgeable contracting, they're operating on something completely different, in which we're giving the illusion of being human. We're giving the illusion of being able to operate in business freely, but in turn, we're being basically moved into in a giant corporate system that has every little detail panned out as to what you can and cannot do. And you can see this all laid out in law. This is why we use ancient instrument that is called trust, because ultimately it's not just a system to where we can operate business, but we can actually take refuge in, because in the system that we're in, things that assume taxation means that you have ownership and you own the whatever gains, whatever income, right? These are things that you own. In fact, you don't own and are being taxed for. So the better route is to completely give up what we're given as the term of ownership in corporation LLC, and in turn use a trust and really start to realize that the real value is not in ownership, but the right of use, and that everything in reality is borrowed. And when we see it in this fashion, then we start to see businesses, family legacies passed down in the right context. There is a quote that I wrote here today by Professor Thatcher, super quickly. It says, the principal purpose of the trust, and this was talking about his trust, this is a very simple purpose, which could be still valid today. You know, the longest standing trust is a land trust, still in operation today. The principal purpose of the trust was to keep the ancestral land in the family and to preserve it in the condition in which it had been received from the settlers' ancestors. It's as simple as that. Well, what's the purpose of your trust? Well, I just want to preserve the condition of property. That's enough to be able to go outside their jurisdiction. But the problem is we're not given enough education. There aren't enough institutions. There's no mass marketing as to get this type of trust. There's only two forms. There's implied and express. And what we share is an express form, a form in which you decide what the terms are, what the purpose is, and how you can mold it into however you wish. Of course, by the lines of the law. And so you can see every single expanse limit to which you can create a trust. And if you know how much as I did and Matt did, and the people that have been working in this work for this many years, you'd know this is the number one thing people need to understand. So once they establish and they can open up their bank account, right? They can start operating their businesses. They can start moving their LLCs, their W-2, start moving forward a more enriching purpose. Because ultimately, behind all of this, you know, technicality and finance and law, there's the basic meaning of purpose, right? And the purpose is the ultimate meaning. And what is the highest meaning in which we're operating under? As a trustee, you get to choose that. As a person, as a corporation, you don't. That's already defined for you. The parameters are there. This is why you're going to be hit by fees and taxes, because you stand to gain. You are, in fact, a direct result of another trust, which has given you a birth certificate and giving you these, you know, rights, which you really don't have. They are truly just benefits from your citizenship. But once you move over to the common law of trustees, everything completely changes. The way that you observe, the way that business is done is completely different and absolutely transparent. And we have so many amazing resources. Matt, you want to share something maybe you've learned? I know we're going through the common benefits, but I wanted to ask you personally earlier this question when we talked about that Alfred D. Chandler book. What's something that might have stood out to you that was said in that book? Because I'm probably sure it's going to hit one of these benefits here.
Well, really, the thing that stood out to me the most, and first of all, I did want to say, if anybody that's watching this live right now, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt us, and we will answer anything that you have. The main thing that I was struck by was the way in which when I first started reading it, and for people that don't know, this is a small little book written by Alfred D. Chandler called Express Trust Under Common Law. And I thought it was going to be a scathing, attack on the trusts and how they're getting away with murder and they don't have to, pay taxes. But it was the exact opposite. It was saying that corporations, by the nature of their structure, completely remove any sort of soul being infused in personal liability or personal responsibility in their structure. And because of that, corporations, although they're the most popular, business type at the time as well, he was saying that by structuring as an express trust under common law, you are taking responsibility. You are being proactive. You're taking a prestigious title, a purpose, and putting your name behind that, representing that trust. You have a vested interest in seeing it succeed and seeing it grow and thrive and have a good reputation. Whereas a corporation, you have all these pencil pushers in their corporate offices, and their only goal is to make sure that the numbers go higher and higher and higher every month. They're not beholden to any higher law or higher order. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were very much in support of the structuring business under a common law trust rather than a corporation because of that.
Yeah, and just, short detail on that, because I know there's individuals out there concerned about the birth certificate, their registration of their person, their status of their person, trying to revoke, rescind, whatever, from their individual person. And what's unique is that the birth certificate is part of a piece, right? That is a causation of something. And it springs from a resulting trust. So if you guys do hear words that regard the trust, let's remember there's hundreds of different types of trusts that are primarily defined by their purpose. And the trusts that are taken with a negative connotation are resulting trusts that provide the person with a status, right? That came from the status came from the resulting trust that provided a birth certificate. So there's only one way to actually combat a resulting trust, because a resulting trust, there is no documentation. There is no express terms in which the trustee is indentured to serve. There is none. With a resulting trust, you have something that doesn't essentially exist, but by way of default, they put you in this box and forces you and compels you to perform. The one way to combat this is to have a written express trust. This is the way to combat their form of trust being imposed on you as a person, is being able to produce actually a written contract that says, I am supposed to be doing this. My sole purpose for living, what I'm doing is this. The law only knows things like agents, right, and officers. This is why we have to switch over and start operating common law trust to be able to reap all the rewards that essentially a corporation would reap without that liability. What's interesting, because I've read through that express trust under common law, and one of the things that, there's so many things that struck me, because every time I read, I'm extrapolating so much information, playing the devil's advocate 24/7. And as I'm reading through this, and you can tell because the context of the time is important, because it shows the development of the law in which that book was developed. And up to that point, even up to this point, trusts are understood for multiple reasons. And they get put into categories through legislation, and these categories end up being statutes in which trusts are created, right? These are the implied trusts. These are the trusts that get registered through the state, that get registered and you get taxed on. These are prepared by attorneys, state planning attorneys, and all this stuff. When we got to the part of reading about charitable trusts, which is this is what's the main point, is that we're not evading taxes because we don't owe any taxes, right? We're avoiding taxes by doing and only operating within, let's say, a parameter in which that does not apply to me. When we operate as a living person, right, unconsciously, we're operating under two things: an actual living person under common law and the fictitious entity that they have created. And so at any two moments, you can be defined by these two walls and these two jurisdictions. And so we find that in one, we are beneficiaries, and the other, we are trustees. There's nothing stopping a charitable trust other than the state attorney general, who is in charge of charitable trusts that are made by statute. There's nothing stopping a common law express trust, even for the main purpose of tax avoidance. There's nothing stopping it from operating a business on the side, even if it's nonprofit, even if its main and sole purpose is to not pay taxes. It still does not have to pay any taxes, right? It's like a couple things, super short thing on the IRS. The IRS comes at you and they say you owe this amount of money. The problem is not the amount. You never negotiate the amount. If you negotiate the amount, it's over for you because you have already accepted, right? The whole point is this does not apply to me. Every single day, we are being imposed upon our entire identity. We're being told this is who you are, this is who you are, not directly, but indirectly through administration. And we have to turn the tables and be able to create our own form of administration. And the best way to administer business happens to be a trust, a common law express trust, in which we can be able to provide meaning, purpose, charitable purpose, which should be the root and purpose of any and all businesses. Who said it wasn't in the beginning? That goes against the fabric of who we are. The only reason we want more is to be able to help other individuals. And even we see with the ultra wealthy, this is what they do. Like, I see so many people saying bad things about these ultra billionaires, their association because of their wealth, whatever. But they've still probably donated more money than you could ever dream of. So we have to understand where that line is. And here at Frontier Capital Trust, we're trying to do everything to produce as much knowledge, as much education, nutrition for the soul, for the person who's trying to understand the law, to be able to operate through and be able to do this legally with comfort and with confidence. Not enough people are doing what we're doing. Every single time I have to say this because I want more people involved. I need more people who are willing to come in and dive in and do some real work that engages this type of information.
And I think that's a really great segue point for us to start talking about the scholarship course that we have coming up on January 27th at 7 p.m. Because the whole philosophy behind that is taking this information that has generally been reserved for ultra wealthy, the wealthiest of the wealthiest, because it seems like if you have a little bit of money, you may create a living trust. But only when you hit that kind of like Rockefeller class is it kind of common knowledge that you can operate in common law, that the statutes don't apply to you unless you put yourself into it. And so the whole philosophy behind us doing the scholarship courses is to bring in people who, either are at a pretty low income level or they're dealing with some sort of acute financial hardship. and they can't afford to, pay very much for anything, let alone, this service that we're offering. And so we get as many people as possible together in a group, and we work out a price with them. Generally, it's extremely reasonable, and we do sponsor usually 1 or 2 people for each one of these courses. But we bring them in. We give everyone access to our online course, which, as you know, Javier, you did almost all the compilation for the written information and PDFs and stuff. So it is extremely thorough and full of information that you're not going to find via Google search. Almost all of this information has been deliberately occulted and obscured by the algorithms. And so people who work with us in the scholarship course, they get access to our course, which has, paperwork templates, tons of background information, PDFs. And then on top of that, we do 3 Zoom calls with the whole group, which usually when we work with somebody, it's structured. First call, everything you need to know to understand opening up your trust, considerations for the name, what to do with the bank account, how to get your EIN. Then the second call is for, okay, now you have your trust open. How are you going to use the trust? That's important, and it's specific for each person. So we go over the considerations for both of those steps, which are supplemented by our course material, which, is ever expanding and loaded with information as it is. So eventually we won't need to do so much hands-on calls with people because the course will be so filled out. But and then a third one for follow-up kind of technical stuff. So by the end of this, we're seeing people, go from never heard of a trust to a competent trustee who no longer needs us, who can handle their own affairs, who have a basic grasp of trust law and how to structure and operate a trust. And then they have the knowledge that is necessary for them to, if a new venture comes up, they know exactly what to do, exactly how to do it to create a new trust and operate that for the express purpose that they're interested in. And so, that's what we're doing on January 27th. We have a short application at courses.frontiercapitaltrust.com/scholarship. And that'll just kind of go through where you're at, what you're dealing with. And after that, we'll call you or email, reach out and get your slot secured. So we kind of wanted to make sure that people hear about that because it's an amazing opportunity. And the value of this information is literally exponential. The more money you make, the more money in taxes you can save. And if you're at a place where you're scraping by and that 30% of your paycheck being taken away from you every month is really hurting you on a week to week or month to month basis, we're unleashing the information and the knowledge that'll allow you to, if you want to start a side business and have a very powerful and secure container for that business that you can create very quickly, that doesn't report taxes and doesn't incur taxable events. That is the key that can get a lot of people out of this hole. And it was one of the things that allowed me to break out of the 9-to-5 and end up in a place where, now I'm working with Frontier Capital and doing stuff for my fellowship. So we're really trying to unleash this information that has been hidden from the average man at their peril for hundreds and hundreds of years, and use that for our benefit and for the benefit of the people who need it most.
Yeah. And, one thing I want to just touch on, because you mentioned property, right? And most people will be like, well, I don't have a lot of property, or the size of my estate isn't really big. I mean, I don't have insurance policies. I don't have this. I don't have a lot of income. And you can look at it this way, but I look at it as qualitative, not quantitative. Who cares about some physical property, some farm, unless, wait, you have children or you have a family. So then what if that definition of property stopped being just some stable or some home or some piece of real estate, so some assets? What if that property, the definition of property, changed to a person, to a human, to you? What does that do to you? So then we start to think about, well, it's not so much the quantity of the property, but rather the meaning and value I place behind that property. So this is where we start to begin to, this would be a good spot to start to think about not just financial and material assets, but the entire premise that goes behind the individual, the person being property. And are you comfortable with being a subcorporate piece of property? Are you comfortable being able to, let's say, have your wages garnished? Are you comfortable with a creditor coming in and being able to take what's yours, including the IRS? Because they're nothing more than some foreign agency who's bullying people using standard company policies, but people are folding over. And the reason is simply just because they don't have enough education. People are being bullied.
Right.
And we're not supposed to be some crazy attorney to be able to fix this issue. How can it be? How can it be? It cannot be the answer. The answer lies in the absolute individual, the individual's capacity to be able to manage their own finances at a standard that is acceptable to be a fiduciary. And at least to this extent, this is what we want. We don't want people just to come in and be like, we want your services. We have capital. We have money. Can you do this for us? Sure, we have services. Sure, we'll help you out. Sure, we'll give you the consults and everything you need in order to organize your business situation. But at the same time, we want individuals who are willing to go above and beyond, right? We want individuals to come in and be that standard, to be that proof, that undoubted. What's interesting is, like, this is why we're also doing, and I feel we're doing this charitable program, is so that we can find individuals that much more are appealing to that education side, because they probably feel that pressure. And if we haven't felt that pressure from the government yet, or from other foreign agencies, we've been living in a hole in the last 2 years. Right? If you start to feel that this is right, what's happening little by little, they're starting to test. This is where you have to be like, well, I got to stay ahead of the curve. How do I hedge against inflation? How do I hedge against my liabilities that I have with my businesses, with my LLCs, with my business partners, with this credit card company? There's ways to navigate through it, and there's so many solutions out there for individuals, and one of them is right here. So,
Yeah, I like how you brought up the risk of not doing this work, because a lot of people think that, somehow this is something spooky or dangerous. But really what is dangerous is continuing to use this legal person that is not serving you, that is incurring these taxable events and opening you up to garnishment, liens, seizure of your property. And at any point, anything that is in the name of your legal person can be taken from you. That is why what you said earlier, we don't have those relative rights anymore. They took the form or the appearance of rights, but they're really privileges. And so because of that corporate structure, you're holding assets with your legal person. That's why they can garnish your wages. That's why they can lien and seize your property. It's because they have that back door into your estate through that entity. And so the real risk is continuing to do what you're doing now despite all of the evidence that the government is just going to keep trying to expand and take more and more and more and control more and more and more.
What's interesting is that you don't go to jail unless there is everything that is considered a crime is a financial transaction. It's a violation against some UCC contract.
Right.
So, as we move, into the world of trusteeship, you start to see that it's not only just, doing business on a regular basis with individuals, but also seeing how we can do business, how we can start working within trustees, a circle of trustees, being able to operate business and not even have any capital. Well, who says we need to have any form of currency? There's so many different positive aspects to the trust. And, just before we start to close, I wanted to go into just a little bit on crypto, just because I know there's a lot of listeners that are listening in and are interested in the trust investing with their trust, using crypto gains to fund their trust, and how to go about that. Because we've seen an incredible shift that everyone I know is feeling, which is, because when I first started with a crypto account, all I needed was an email. And sure enough, I felt totally secure. It's like, oh, blockchain technology, we have these digital contracts. I understand the technology. I see the value. But then quickly, the powers that be saw the mass volume and interest in what I call a speculative commodity, which at first people thought was a security, but the government's trying to regulate it into a commodity, piece of property, whatever, it makes no difference. So now we've seen so many exchanges in which they're requiring KYC policies, right? People are coming in, now they have to put their information. I think on Coinbase, people have to take pictures now of themselves with, a piece of paper with the date on it, just ridiculous things. In order to basically have control over an industry, that's all it is. Being able to have data points, being able to get a piece of that puzzle. And the reason why also, crypto's gotten so much credibility is because these institutions have grown so much, and because so much of it is so speculative. You can say they're investments, but to those people that are experienced, these are speculative investments. So let's just say, you got into crypto knowing you're going to be anonymous. You open up broker accounts and all this, and you have several hundreds of thousands in your crypto bank account. Now what? Now you're afraid to withdraw. Now you might have to approach a specialized crypto accountant to see if, what you can do about your realized gains, and try to reduce that tax liability, which is enormous and still somewhat in a gray area. One thing that I want to mention is everything that is considered part of that association, with that commodity or security, right? Your crypto account with your broker, it's built on something, right? There's a foundation, which is the business type. Whatever business type you put down, LLC, C Corp, this has a certain status on it connected to the person, and it has a certain way of being taxed, especially when it moves through merchant processors or you have it withdrawn. Then there is a taxable event that has to be recorded and then reported. You say you want to have an anonymity, right? And this is what main people that intrigued a lot of people that are in crypto to become anonymous, to not be part of this institutionalized world. The issue is that if your speculative investment has grown to a substantial degree, where are you going to put that? Right. Where are you going to place those realized gains? Where? So that the foreign agencies don't start to ask questions. They quickly look at your social security. They say this man has no money, but yet he's living in this beautiful house. The first thing they're going to do is look into the person. They're going to look into the business entity types associated with the person. The best way to do this is to not use a person. The best way to do this is to use a trust, right? This separates a liability, not just any trust, an irrevocable form of trust in which that separation of liability becomes permanent. And then there is no way for any of those, again, right of use. This is what you want. You don't want ownership. You want right of use, the ability to withdraw. If you have that withdrawal, if you do that withdrawal, make it over to your trust account. This is not a taxable event. You won't be able to, let's say, they won't be able to come in and start assessing, whether that trust is taxable or not. That's none of their business. Right? Even if Coinbase, you set up broker accounts left and right, they can send 1099s forever, and it means nothing. 1099s is a regulatory policy that that has to be applied to certain organizations. It's been written in law that they have to do this, but not all exchanges do it. But just because an exchange does it or does not do it doesn't mean that it's taxable. Well, that's not the question. The question is, after taxes, after adjusted gross income, after business, then that is your taxable your taxable liability is this number. So most people don't even know how to navigate through the crypto world, and much less want to have to deal with the accounting part. So it's much easier to be able to set up a trust specifically for investments and be able to get all of this handled in a way that is much more simplified, much more easy, and so simple to be able to operate through. And this could be done in a few minutes, as simple as setting up institutional corporate accounts through your trust and using your trust EIN, using your trust documents that we provide for you and everything, to be able to make this a streamlined and a very simple process.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Did we get some messages?
I think it was Daniel commenting for people future reference, but yeah, I think that this is a good place to end on, of that, you know, typically people that we work with, we help them come up with a number of trusts depending on their needs, usually one for investments, one for property, and one for business. And in that way, the same benefits that you just talked about for a crypto investment account or another type of investment account will apply to the property. You know, the property will own the trust, you don't, and same with the business. The trust is making the money, it's not incurring those taxable events, it's a back end container for the finances, and it has a unique personality that really eliminates almost all taxable events. So anybody that wants to work with us, we have tons of free information that you can find at courses.frontiercapitaltrust.com/findfreedom. And then if you are interested in the scholarship course, you're going through a financial hardship or you're on the lower end of the income scale, fill out our application at courses.frontiercapitaltrust.com/scholarship. And we'll walk you through everything that you need to know. We demystify all of this stuff. I know it's very intimidating to hear all the legalese and all that stuff, but we break it down. We make it very simple. And with our 3 consultation calls, we explain everything in plain English and make sure that you're confident in what you're doing before you move forward. So I think this would be probably a good place to wrap up. Javier, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, man. Thank you for hosting and everything. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, if anybody has any questions, anytime you make a comment on one of our videos or on our posts, feel free, or you can send us a message on our Facebook page or contact@frontiercapitaltrust.com. And we look forward to working with as many people as possible to get these tools out to people who really have the most desperate need for them. So blessings, guys. Thank you for checking this video out.